With so many defensive abilities in RuneScape 3, if you're going to want to stand any chances against bosses, you're going to need to know what they do. If you stick around to the end of the video, you're going to be able to leave knowing everything about the abilities, how to use them, and how they're going to benefit you. So, let's get straight into it. So, Devotion is a threshold ability, guys, and it does take 50% adrenaline to use, and you're not going to need a shield to use this ability. So, Protection Prayers are 100% effective, 75% for PvP, for 10 seconds. Killing an opponent extends the effect by 5 seconds, up to a maximum of 20 seconds. So, an example of how this is going to work is if someone is attacking you with range, or a monster is attacking you with range, and you are playing Protect from range or Deflect missiles, using Devotion is going to make that 100% effective. So basically you're not going to take any damage from that. I think actually you take maybe 1 damage, something like that, just to show the hit splats, which is absolutely nothing. So another thing that you can use with this Devotion ability is, as it says, killing an opponent extends the effect by 5 seconds. So this is really good to use. For example, if you're in a Raxor and he's summoning his minions, pop Devotion, and every time you kill a spider minion, it's going to extend that duration by 5 seconds all up to 20 seconds. So this ability is really good to use in specific boss fights, as it's going to reduce a lot of your damage, and it can be used very situational as well to block damage. For example, if you're going in Calfight King, you can use it to block the insta-kill hit in melee phase. So the next ability we're looking at is Anticipation. Now, it's a basic ability and doesn't need a shield to be used, and it has a 24-second cooldown. Concentrate on anticipating your foe's attacks, reducing all damage taken by 10% and providing immunity from stuns for 10 seconds. Now, it says that it provides immunity from stuns for 10 seconds, but what it also does is stops you from being displaced from where you are. So if you're stood at a Raxor and you've used Anticipation, when he tries to use his pull and swipe ability, he won't be able to move you from your space and pull you towards him. So it's also good for things like that as well. You're going to be using Anticipation with Freedom quite a lot, so you're going to have to get used to the rotation of these with the cooldowns and stuff like that. You'll be using that at Araxor and next bosses like that. Now, another good thing about Anticipation is, say for example you're being attacked by quite a lot of sort of spawns or mobs at one time. The 10% damage reduction is going to add up quite a lot, so it'll just sort of stack on each one of those minions, and all the damage reduced will all end up being quite a decent amount. We'll just jump to Freedom now, seeing as we've just gone over Anticipate, and they do kind of go hand in hand. After that we'll return back to Bash and we'll move along the line like I said before. So Freedom is another basic ability, has a 30-second cooldown, and no, you don't need a shield to use this either. So break free of any stuns or snares and gain immunity to any further ones for 6 seconds. Also clears damage over time effects. So basically, Freedom's going to be one of your sort of best defensive abilities that you're going to be using in boss fights. The reason being is, if you do get stunned, for example in Nex's Ice Prism, and you've not used Anticipate beforehand, you can still use Freedom to get out of that and eat up or put a shield on, something like that. So just clear the stuns even if you're already stunned. Another thing that it does is, if you get a bleed put on you and you use Freedom, it's going to remove that bleed effect from you. It also works on non-damage type bleeds as well. For example, the melee Araxor damage over time effect. If that built up a bit, you can use your Freedom to get rid of things like that as well. So, like I said, you're going to be using this in hand with Anticipate to rotate, being able to avoid any stuns as well. Moving back up to Bash now, it is a basic ability. You do need a shield to use it, and it has a 15-second cooldown. So, bash your target with your shield, dealing up to the sum of 100% weapon damage, plus your shield's armor value. Now, I can't think of anything that you'd use bash for specifically. Obviously, you've got stuns on your other combat styles anyway. I guess it's good if you've used a stun and you need one, to have that where you can just throw your shield on and have access to another stun. And obviously, with it not being a threshold, you have access to it straight away, and it's got a quite short cooldown, I suppose. So that's always good. But if there is a reason why you'd need bash, let me know in the comment section. I will put it on an annotation on the screen. The next ability we're looking at is Revenge. Now, Revenge is a threshold ability, has a 45-second cooldown, and you do need a shield to use this, and also you're going to need 50% adrenaline to be able to use the threshold ability. So, enact revenge upon your foes, crushing any attacks you receive to increase your max hit by 10%, stacking up to 100%, lasting 20 seconds. So, this is a really good ability when you need to camp a shield. For example, at Telos, maybe in phase 5 when the minions are out, you're going to want to use revenge, and this way you can camp your shield for extra damage and using abilities like reflect as well, while still being able to deal a decent amount of damage, especially once it's stacked up. So a good idea, sort of example of a combination, is you would use revenge and then reflect, and then you could charge up a detonate, so you're going to be taking nearly no damage because of the reflect while you're charging it up, and then you can release the detonate with just a wand and a shield, and it's going to be matching the damage as if you have it offhand or if you're using a staff, just because your revenge is charged up to 100%. Now, like I said, this lasts 20 seconds, so it is quite a good ability to use in situations like that where you need to have reflect on or barricade, stuff like that. But you also need to be dealing quite a lot of damage at the same time. You are going to be using this quite a bit. I use it a fair bit at Telos and at Araxor. So, like I say, guys, it's just stuff that you're going to have to get used to using situationally, and there will be times when you are kind of forced into using it. Our next ability is Provoke. Now, it's a basic ability, has a 10-second cooldown, and you don't need a shield to use it. So, taunt your target, forcing them to focus their attacks on you. Player targets have their damage reduced by 50% when attacking anyone other than yourself. However, you also do 50% less damage when attacking any other players, and it lasts 6 seconds. So, this is basically an aggro ability in PvE. So, for example, if you're at Calfight King and you're tanking, you're going to want to be using Provoke to bring the aggro to yourself, and then the person who's taking Calfight King off of you when it does the instant attack will use Provoke to take aggro off of him and bring it back onto himself. So, that's how it's used in PvE. But, however, it does have a PvP effect, and that's the player targets have their damage reduced by 50%. So if you are in PvP and say you've gone into Deep Wilderness and it's multi-combat, and you use Provoke on an enemy player, and you and your buddy there are 2v2 maybe, and you use Provoke on one of them, if that person attacks anyone but you, they're going to do 50% less damage. So if you use Provoke on someone and then they attack your friend, they're going to do 50% less damage on them than they would have to you. However, if you provoke somebody and then you attack somebody else, you're also going to do 50% less damage to them. So it is quite useful in PvP if two people are focusing down your friend, you can provoke one of them and it'll reduce their damage significantly, allowing your friend to possibly just survive and stay alive. So our next ability is Immortality. This is an ultimate ability. You do need a shield to use it. You need 100% adrenaline, as it is an ultimate ability, and it has 120 seconds cooldown. Now, any damage you receive is reduced by 25% for 30 seconds. If you should die during this period, you will miraculously return to life with 40% of your maximum life points. However, the immortality effect will be consumed. So, this is a very useful ability to use in places where it has sort of like an insta-kill mechanic. So, for example, in Nex, if you're in the ice prison and you cannot heal up quickly enough, or you don't have resonance available, things like that, and you're going to die, if you have 100% adrenaline and you pop Immortality, then you're going to be able to let yourself die, but you'll come back with 40% health. Also, in Telos, to avoid the first font on the insta-kill, you won't need to do the first font because you can use Immortality, and I believe you can rotate this for every second, every other font, so you can use Immortality and then font the minions on the second one and then use Immortality again. So it is quite useful for that. But also taking into account the fact that damage is reduced by 25% for 30 seconds, that is a long time to have 25% less damage, so it is pretty good. Even if you're just getting hammered on, you can use Immortality just to reduce that damage that you are taking. So it is a really good ability to sort of use, but it is also quite situational. So, skipping past Freedom and moving on to Reflect. This is a threshold ability, and you do need a shield to use it. It has a 30-second cooldown, and as it is a threshold ability, you will need 50% adrenaline to be able to use this ability. Now, raise your shield, reducing the damage you receive by 50%, or 25% in PvP, of incoming damage and reflecting it back at the attacker, and it lasts 10 seconds. So reflect is a really good ability to use, for example, when you're taking too much damage and you want to reduce it quite a bit. The reflecting damage back to the attacker is quite useful in PvP, but in PvE you probably won't notice it too much. It is helpful to use, and you can use it. For example, I use it for phasing the Telos in phase 4. Whether that's right or not, I tend to do that if I can. Also on phase 5, a good example for using reflect is if the golems are up and they're absolutely smacking the shit out of you, but you need to pray magic to stop Telos from smacking the shit out of you even more. You can use reflect, and that will reduce a lot of damage from those golems. It's good to use in conjunction with revenge, like I said before. So if you've got reflect on, but you've also got revenge stacking up, so you can deal more damage, you're going to be reflecting damage back to whoever's attacking you, but also taking less damage. And then at the same time, you can still do full weapon damage once it's charged to 100%. So, for example, like I said before, if you use revenge, reflect, and then charge a detonate on all the golems in Telos, for example, then you're going to be able to clear them down with a big amount of damage while you took nearly no damage whatsoever. Now, reflect does work on non-combat style abilities, so I'll call it true damage, I suppose. The red hit splats that you get. Now, this is really useful because, for example, if a rock was falling on you in Telos, you can reduce that down by 50%, and it will allow you to stay alive in a lot of situations. So reflect is one of those abilities that you can kind of jump to. If you feel like, oh crap, I'm panicking and I'm going to die, you can chuck your shield on if you've got 50% adrenaline and use reflect, and you'll probably be able to survive quite a lot by eating up while reflect's on. So moving on to the next ability, pretty much my favourite basic ability from defense is Resonance. Now, like I said, it's a basic ability. You do need a shield to use it, but it has a 30-second cooldown as well. The next attack you receive within 6 seconds will heal you instead of harm you. Heals 50% of the incoming damage, an additional 0.5% for every shield level. Certain level boss attacks will have their damage prevented, but will not heal. So, this ability basically heals you instead of taking damage from attacks, and it is the very first attack that hits you. A miss will not proc this, but a damage for 1 or 2 will still proc it. So it is about timing as well in certain situations. But I take a shield with me everywhere that I go, whether I'm just doing Slayer or not, just because sometimes it's useful to chuck this on and use Resonance just to get a bit of healing. It reduces the use for food in a hell of a lot of bosses. Looking at my last video, you can see that I've mentioned Resonance quite a lot. At Calfat King, you can use it to heal for full if you are provoking. You can use it at Araxor when they're in the web to get a bit of healing back. You can use it at Nex to reduce damage in the ice prison. I'm sure you can sort of think of a few ways that you can use Resonance to benefit yourselves. The fact that it's a basic ability and doesn't actually take any adrenaline for you to use is absolutely amazing, because once every 30 seconds you can chuck this on and use it. Now, when it says here an additional 0.5% for every shield level, this means the higher level your shield is, the more healing you're going to be getting out of it. So if you're using a wooden shield in comparison to a malevolent shield, you're going to heal a lot of damage more using the malevolent shield instead of the wooden shield, because the higher level your shield is, the more healing you're going to get. And it says certain large boss attacks will have their damage prevented but will not heal. Now, this can be used to block some damage, like it says. For example, Telos's so much power attack will not heal you, but it will block it. But at the same time, Telos's hold still attack, where it does a lot of melee damage to you, is going to heal you off of that. So it can be taken into a lot of boss fights to completely remove the use for food. If you look around YouTube, you can see that some people can do Telos with absolutely no food whatsoever. And this is down to abilities like Resonance. After Resonance, we've got Rejuvenate. Now this is another ultimate ability. You do need a shield to use it, and it has a 300-second cooldown. And obviously, being an ultimate ability, you're going to need 100% adrenaline to use this. So, channel your adrenaline to help restore 40% of your life points and fully restore your drain stats over 10 seconds. So, what this does is, if you are quite low, it's quite a useful ability for healing up. So if you've been slaying, for example, and you don't have Guthix Butterfly, or you don't have an enhanced Excalibur, you're going to be able to put on your shield once you've got 100% adrenaline and use Rejuvenate, and it is going to restore 40% of your health, and like it says, restore your drained stats fully over 10 seconds. So, for example, if you are on the ice plateau, don't know why that's the first thing that came to mind, and your stats have been drained from the cold, you can use Rejuvenate to restore those stats. It does take 10 seconds, but it will fully restore them for you. Like I say, this is a really good ability if you are doing something like Slayer and you don't have that Excalibur or Guthix Butterfly to be able to use instead, where you can put your shield on and you can reduce the need for food by a hell of a lot just by doing this. Obviously you can use it once every 5 minutes, so that's quite useful as well. Our next ability is one that I pronounce wrong almost every single time I've mentioned it in a video, but Debilitate, and this is a threshold ability. You don't need a shield to use it, however a shield does come into the mention later on, and it's got a 30-second cooldown. Being a threshold ability, you do need 50% adrenaline to use this, so debilitate your target for up to 100% weapon damage, also reducing any damage they deal to you by 50% for 7.8 seconds. This duration increases if a shield is equipped by 0.6 seconds for every 10 shield levels. So when I said a shield does come into it later on, is if you have a shield equipped when you use this, it will increase the duration for that. And like I say, it scales depending on which shield you're using, so you will get more out of a level 90 shield than a wooden shield. So this ability is really useful in rotating with Devotion as well. So if you use Devotion to reduce all your damage down to 0, for example, in a fight where you're only being hit by one sort of attack style, you can then use Debilitate after that, and then your damage will be reduced by 50% as well. So it is a good way to reduce food that's needed and also stop yourself from taking so much damage. Other than that, it's not really situational, but it is going to be something that you use at specific timing. You are going to only want to use this when you are wanting to take less damage, which I guess is most of the time, but it's going to be saved for specific times and fights. For example, during a Raxor, you're probably going to want to spam that any chance you've got, really. But in a Raxir, you might want to save it for just before that acid core is about to come out. Then you can reduce that damage after the acid cores come out by 50%, and by which time in 8 seconds you usually should be able to finish off a Raxi by that point. So it'll just sort of save you from getting one hit when the core lands on you and say an attack hits you at the same time. So our next ability is Preparation. It's a basic ability. It has a 20-second cooldown. You do need a shield to use it. And being a basic ability, you don't need any adrenaline whatsoever. So, prepare for the fight ahead, causing each attack you receive to reduce the remaining cooldown of Resonance by 3 seconds. Last 10 seconds. So, this is a ability that's basically going to be used in conjunction with Resonance. You're more or less going to be using this only when you camp in a shield. Or I use it for building adrenaline sometimes when the target's unattackable, but you can still use abilities in your defensives to build a little bit of adrenaline. So what this does is, if you've used Resonance already, and then you use this straight afterwards, any attacks that you take after the Resonance proc, or actually after you've activated this ability, is then going to reduce the cooldown of Resonance by 3 seconds. So if you take 10 attacks instantly, then you're going to be reducing Resonance cooldown straight away, and you can use it straight away again, probably. This lasts 10 seconds, like it says. However, if you take your shield off, it will remove that effect. You do have to have the shield equipped for it to work. So it is quite a useful ability to have, especially if you're wanting to use Resonance quite a lot, and if there's a lot of minions attacking you at the same time. So, like I say, it's a situational ability. I use it to build adrenaline, for example, when Araxor goes under a web, and you can't deal damage to them without reflecting it back to yourselves. So what you can do is use the Resonance and attack them to heal off of that. But then if you use Preparation, you're going to get that extra bit of adrenaline without having to damage them, if that makes any sense. So that's basically all there is for Preparation. It's just a completely basic ability in conjunction with Resonance. Our next ability is Barricade. This is an ultimate ability. You need a shield equipped to use it, and it has a 60-second cooldown. being an ultimate ability, you do need 100% adrenaline to use this. So, summon an impenetrable barricade, which prevents all damage received for a minimum of 4 seconds and increases based on the level of shield equipped up to 10 seconds. You can then extend that duration even more by using turtling perk on your shields, but we'll go into another video on perks and stuff like that. So for now, we'll just stick to what it says on the ability. Now, this ability is absolutely amazing for PVM. Like he says, it removes all damage received, and when it says all damage, it literally is all damage whatsoever. I can't think of anything that actually goes through barricade. I don't think anything does. In fact, Araxel's swipe, I think, might go through it. That's something to test, maybe. I will show it on the screen. I will test it for you and show you now. However, this ability can literally be used to save your life so many times. It's unbelievable. And there's lots of different ways that you can use it as well. So if you have the Lunar Spellbook active, for example, and you use barricade, you can then cast Heal Other or Heal Group as many times as you like, and it's not going to have that cost of health on yourself. So normally when you cast Heal Other on somebody, it's going to take health off of you, and then they'll get healed as well. However, if you're using barricade, you can't take any damage, so you can cast Heal Other, spam it at will if you like until the duration's over. Not only that, you can use it in really any situation in bossing where you think you might die, and it will just basically stop you from dying. So it's really good to use in Telos when you've got the bleed on you, you've got minions whacking on you, and he's beating the crap out of you, and you need to get to a beam that's on the other side of the room. You can't eat, prayer swap, and you move across the room at the same time. So you chuck on barricade and you just sort of chill out a little bit and make your way over to that beam to reduce that bleed effect. So, like I say, barricade is definitely an ability you're going to want to put into practice and use, and you will find yourselves using it quite a lot. So moving on to our last defensive ability now. This is Natural Instinct. It's an ultimate ability. You don't need a shield to use it. It has a 120 second cooldown, and being an ultimate ability, you do need 100% adrenaline to use that. So, instantly leech your target's adrenaline. If fighting a non-player opponent that does not use adrenaline for the next 20 seconds, you will gain 200% adrenaline from your own abilities. So, basically, if you're in PvP, you're going to be leeching the target's adrenaline instantly. However, in PvE, which is probably where most of you guys are going to be using it, it means that every ability that you use, you're going to be getting 200% of that adrenaline gain from normal. What this does, as a duration of 20 seconds, you can use Natural Instinct to build up your adrenaline really quick, drop down a Death Swiftness or a Sunshine or a Berserk, and then you can still gain up to those thresholds or ultimates even again really quickly. So it is quite a situational ability to use again. For example, you could use it in Telos on phase 5. If you've got this, you're in the green beam as well, and you're attacking Telos, you're going to be building up your adrenaline ridiculously quick. You're going to be able to spam ultimates and not really notice the difference. But it's really good for stacking up adrenaline and using ultimates at the same time, and that's where it shines most, I'd say. There is a lot of ways that you can use this that I'm not completely aware of yet, but like I say, it's something that you can sort of weave into your abilities to build up that adrenaline really quickly if you're in a situation where you do need to build up really fast adrenaline. So then, now that we know what all the defensive abilities do, you can try and put these into practice in your bossing fights, and it should make it a lot easier for you. It's just going to stop you from having to go head on to this boss without any defensives, and just DPS pushing your way through every fight. This way, if you do that, you're going to be taking a lot of damage that you needn't take. You're going to be using a lot of food, and it's going to drop your profits. Also, it's going to make the fight a hell of a lot harder for yourselves than it needs to be. Defensives are there to make your life easier, to work your way around mechanics. And the great thing about it, like for example I've mentioned with EOC before, it allows Jagex to give us bosses that you wouldn't usually be able to get past without these abilities. So for example, it just, like Telos for example, you can use the defensive abilities to get past phase 5. People who've got up to 4,000% enrage on Telos, you look at the defensives that they use, and they're going to be using them a hell of a lot, and they use them at the perfect timing and all that sort of stuff. It's a lot of practice. But don't think, defensives are a waste of time because it doesn't deal any damage. They're not. They're absolutely amazing. And like I say, I recommend having a defensive tab open on your screen at all times. just to go to with that, and to always bring a shield wherever you go in, because it's just so useful to have one. Whether you do bring a wooden shield just because you want to use a couple of defensives or not doesn't matter too much, but like I say, I do recommend, even if you are just doing a Slayer task, just take a shield with you. You never know, you might need one eventually. So I hope this video has helped you guys. I hope you've learned what the defensive abilities do, and I hope that you can now go into your boss fights and make it quite a lot easier on yourselves. I know that defensive abilities are something that people like to say to you, just read through them and you'll know what they do, but sometimes it's good to have that scenario where you would use them, just so you can put it into reference. So, as always guys, see you later. Bye.